Have you had an encounter you'd like to hear narrated on this channel? If so, send me an email with all the details. You can email me at contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Well, hey there, friends. Welcome back to Buckeye Bigfoot, where the snackage is always plentiful, the campfire is always warm, and there's always a seat for you. And the stories here run a little deeper and a little more true than a lot of folks would like to admit. Now, today's story comes to us from a man named Jesse, and he's out from near Jasper, Arkansas, I think it was. Now, Jesse doesn't seem like the type to go spinning yarns just for fun, but he sure has got something to say about his little brother named Clay, and what happened one foggy morning back in 1996 that changed him for good, or maybe for the worse. Go on, settle in, get your snackage. This one's a quiet one, until it ain't. My name's Jesse Taylor. I'm a retired mill worker, born and raised in Newton County. I don't tell stories for attention, and I sure have never seen any little green men or UFOs in the sky. But I do have something that I've been carrying for close to 30 years now. And every fall, right around the time the leaves turn and the mornings get crisp and it's time to go hunting, I think about it. I think about my brother Clay. Clay was 4 years younger than me, quieter, gentler in some ways, but sharper than most folks realized. He had this way of sitting still, real still, like pond water with no breeze. He could sit still like that for hours, just watching the world. At times I itched to go check to make sure he was still breathing. That's how still he could sit. That was pretty useful when we went hunting, though. Growing up in Arkansas, our daddy taught us to fish and hunt. Our daddy had us tracking deer sign while we were still learning to read in school. And Clay, he took to it real natural-like. By the time he was 14, he could outfish, outtrack, and outshoot me on any day of the week and twice on Sundays. And he was patient, you know? Like he knew that all he had to do was sit still and wait. And whatever it was that he wanted, it would walk right out into his scope's sight, or that fish would wiggle its way across the river right onto his hook. And you know what? That is kind of how it usually happened for him. But this was November of 1996, and the Razorbacks had just lost to LSU, and Clay was madder than a hornet about it. So, for a little distraction, we planned to hunt out near Rich Hollow, way back off the main roads. Old timberland, quiet. I picked him up before dawn, somewhere around 4 a.m. We both had thermoses full of coffee and a couple of snack bars to hold us for the day. We had had a lot of cold rain overnight, and the fog was thick that morning. There was about 10, maybe 15 feet of visibility all around you in a circle. It just followed you as you walked. But beyond that, everything was purely whited out. But we had hunted this area many, many times over the years, and we knew it well. Even with our limited field of vision, we walked to our stands with no trouble. I dropped Clay off at his stand, which was really just a platform straddling 2 old oaks. Then I walked on another few hundred yards to my own spot down by the creek. I sat there for hours, listening to nothing but dead silence. There was a time I recall thinking, man, this is too quiet, too still. What is going on? It seemed to me that even the creek was afraid of making a noise as it trickled by. Somewhere around 9:30, I keyed the walkie. "Hey, any sign down your way?" I asked. Silence. I waited about 10 seconds more and then repeated my walkie call, but all I got was more silence. I figured our old walkie was on the fritz. Those older Motorola types weren't exactly high-tech, not even back then. But I wasn't too worried. I stayed put for about another hour. Then I packed up and started walking back toward Clay's stand. And that is when things started feeling really off. I got to where Clay's stand was, but it was empty. Sure, it was possible he got down and walked away to go answer nature's call. But our rule was that any time we left a stand, we let the other one know. Whether we were chasing down something that we had shot, whether we needed help field dressing or had to go, water some forest plants. We didn't have many rules, but always letting each other know, that was one of them. So I keyed the walkie again, and I started to say his name. But as soon as I did, I heard the crackle of a walkie all the way up on the platform. His walkie was up there, but he wasn't. That was another big no-no. There came a sour feeling into my stomach when I heard that. Looking again up at the platform, I noticed his pack was still hanging on the side rail hook. I didn't see his rifle, though. To heck with any game that might be around, I thought. I loudly started calling out his name. I was getting worried. After each call, I'd stop and wait a few seconds, listening, wondering if he was far away and needing help. But there was never an answer. As I looked around, I saw it. The boot prints at the base of the tree. The indentation was deep in the wet ground. Clear definition of 2 boots together, showing he had jumped down off the tree a couple rungs up. It didn't take much to find his next prints. I followed the prints downhill towards the creek, but they weren't going in the direction of my stand, and they weren't too old by the look of them. But here's the thing. 30 yards down following his prints, they suddenly weren't alone anymore. Something had joined him. And I'm not talking a deer or some bear. I didn't rightly know what to make of them at first. These tracks were big. I mean really, really big. Looking like bare human feet with 5 toes, about 15 inches long and sunk deep into the damp ground, much deeper than Clay's boot prints. They had all the look of a human bare foot, but I knew there was no way. I looked in the direction these prints met Clay's. I didn't back follow them, but it looked like they were vectored in down the hill to meet him. It had the look and feel of a pursuit. By now my heart was knocking in my chest. I will guess it was a couple 100 yards more when I finally found Clay. I was so focused on following those tracks, I wasn't thinking about the distance I was covering. But I will say, it was a good bit before I found him. He was sitting up against a cedar tree. He wasn't lying down. He wasn't bleeding anywhere I could see. He wasn't injured at all, not that I could find anyway. He was sitting, rock still, the way I told you about. Back against the tree, legs straight out, rifle across his lap, held in a death grip. Clay's eyes were open, not blinking, staring out into the woods like he was seeing something I couldn't. I called his name as I ran to him. He didn't move. He didn't respond. His face was a shade of white that is not natural in a living human. For a second, I was truly afraid he was dead. I skidded to a stop on my knees by him. I shook his shoulders and called his name again and again. I was truly good and scared that my brother had already left this earthly world. Finally, Clay blinked, like he came back to earth. He turned and he looked at me. I will never forget his face or his eyes. Those eyes were wide. His face was the palest white I've ever seen on a still living human. Clay wasn't just scared. He was terrified of something. This was not my brother. I told you he could outdo me on hunting and fishing and all of that. But the thing I didn't tell you is that he was braver and stronger than me by leaps and bounds. I helped him to stand up. All the time he was white with a blank expression and eyes wide and fearful, like a deer when it's scared. Big eyes like that. When he stood, it was clear that he had urinated on himself. I noticed, but I said nothing. That was just more proof that my brother had seen or been through something absolutely terrifying. I walked him back to his stand, but he stood there, would not even look up. So I went up the stand. I packed up what was there, and together we walked out. All the time, he was not speaking. I tried 100 times between there and home to get him to talk to me. But no, sir, he was not talking. And you know something? Him being silent was far more scary to me than anything he could have actually told me. A few weeks later, and Clay kind of seemed like his old self again. I thought, now's the time to try to talk to him about this. There was a little bit of a lull in the conversation as we sipped our beer, so I asked him, "Hey, what happened out there that day, Clay? You know, in the woods." Clay didn't look at me. He lit another cigarette with a shaky hand, took a long drag. He knew exactly what day I meant. Then he said one word. Nothing. But his voice cracked, and he still couldn't look at me. I knew my brother. I knew he was lying. I let it go. Years went by. Clay moved to Little Rock, worked construction, stayed single, and never ever talked about that day. But most notably, he never went hunting again. He would shut me down fast every time I went near that idea with him. He stayed in the cities, refused to even go to state parks for a picnic. He wanted nothing to do with trees and woods. I had lost my hunting partner, but as long as I still had my brother, in essence, well, that was the important thing, so I let it go. I learned to hunt without him, and I just went on with life. Then about 10 years back, he took a bad fall on the job, broke his ankle, shattered his leg. They ended up having to do surgery. I went down to Little Rock to visit him in the hospital. We were just talking about football and all the things he said he was going to go eat when he got out of that hospital. You know, just light talk filling up all the time. Then a nurse came in and gave him a shot of pain meds into his IV. I took that as my cue to go. But just as I'm about to leave, he says to me, "You remember that last hunting trip?" His words were already slurring a little, and I could see that he was now visibly relaxed, the pain meds already going to work. But he was still very conscious and aware. I stopped at the door. Remember it, I thought. You bet I remember it. I might have forgotten a lot of other things, but that day was not one of them. "Yeah," I say. "Yeah, I remember." Clay was staring up at the pebble drop ceiling tiles above him like he was getting a message from a higher being. I waited, wondering if it was just the pain meds that got him to start talking, and now he was going to clam up or maybe fall asleep. Then real soft he says, "It walked like a man, Jesse, like a man, but it wasn't a man." I walked back to stand by his bed. He still would not look me in the eye. "What was it?" I asked. Now, over the years, I had thought about it, and I had my own ideas, but I needed to hear him say it. "I don't know," he said. He was quiet a few seconds. Then he says, "I saw it when it was far away. I saw it in my binoculars when I was looking for game. I saw that it was looking right at me. Right at me. He stressed those last 3 words. Then he looked me right in the eyes when he said it. I could see the fear in his eyes just remembering what he saw that day. I waited. I had waited years to hear what had happened. I was not about to interrupt him. It was like nothing I'd ever seen, Jesse. I thought at first it was another hunter, but there was no orange anywhere, and even that far away, it was just too dang big. I was looking at it. I was looking right at it, trying to figure it out, and I swear it was looking right back at me, right back through the binoculars. I got scared when it started to make a beeline straight for me. I guess I panicked. I wasn't sure that it wasn't a person, so I didn't want to shoot. But Jesse, I knew it wasn't a person. I knew it. It had the shape of a man. It walked on 2 legs like a man. Its face had all the things a man's face has, just bigger, meaner, and covered in hair. I was hearing what Clay was saying, and I did believe him, but it still knocked me for a loop to actually hear it. "Sasquatch?" I said, half question, half statement. He nodded. "I think so," he said. Well, that was enough. I had my answer, or so I thought. But there was more. Clay waited just a second, like he was thinking about it, and then he said, "I was going to run to you that day. I thought between the 2 of us we would be all right. Maybe you would know what it was or what to do. Maybe you'd say, heck, that's just some hunter mad that we're here." I got so far down the way toward the creek, and Jesse was following me. It was just a few feet behind me the whole way. Clay's voice was shaking as he remembered it all. And then I realized he wasn't just telling me this story. He was reliving it. Then he continued, "That's why I turned and went away from your stand the way I did. I did not want to lead it to you. I thought if it killed me, if it did, well, maybe that would be enough for it. And before you found me, it would be long gone." If I hadn't been holding on to the rails of his hospital bed, I think I might have fell over. It hit me that my little brother was leading it away from me. "At one point," he said, "I turned and I was going to shoot it, man or whatever it was, but—" Clay faltered here, so I waited. "But it was so close to me when I turned around. I couldn't get the rifle barrel down between us. That's how close it was. I tried, but it stopped me. It knocked the rifle out of my hand and pushed me down. That's when I crawled up against the tree." I saw tears leaking from the corners of his eyes. I watched them roll down the sides of his face to wet the hairline above his ears. I held my breath and waited. "I thought this was it," he said. "I thought I was dead." It bent down right in front of me. It was sniffing me. It would get close to me and take deep breaths in, and it would look me in the eye while it did it. Oh God, Jesse, I can still smell it. Its breath when it exhaled was terrible, and it made sure to blow it right in my face, right up my nose. The tears were flowing freely with him now, and I had a thought to tell him to stop talking about it. I wanted to know, but not if it took my little brother down like this. He continued, "I swear, Jesse, it was smelling my fear. It was loving it. It liked my fear. It stayed squat bent in front of me for a long time, just sniffing me over and over. I remember thinking, get it over with. Go ahead. Bite me. Kill me. Do something. But it just kept sniffing me. and it made sounds that were kind of happy. And it would open its mouth the way a cat does when it smells something through its mouth. And it would do it right in front of my face. The eyes, they looked like they were smiling when it looked at me. Clay now rushed out with a bunch of words I could hardly understand. But he was talking about the awful feeling of it sniffing him so close that he could feel its nose touch his skin, how it licked the front of his neck where his shirt was unbuttoned, like it was tasting the salt on his skin. Through it all, Clay said it was clear that the Sasquatch was enjoying all of it. He was convinced it liked knowing how scared Clay was. Then he said, "When I peed on myself, it bent down and sniffed my crotch, and I swear it made happy sounds and smiled. It laughed. I swear, it laughed at me, Jesse." Clay started to cry a little more, and then he trailed off. I think the heavy pain meds had finally taken hold of him. In a few more seconds, Clay went quiet. His eyes were shut. His breathing became steady. He was lights out, so to speak. But even still, a couple more tears slid down the side of his face. I stood there stunned, right by his hospital bed, just a little longer, just to make sure he was out. Then, in a daze, I left for home. That night I thought over everything he told me. The full weight of the truth of what Clay had endured all these years came down on me. That moment with the Sasquatch had lasted for an eternity for Clay. And when it was over, he spent years reliving it, carrying it around in silence. When it finally stopped torturing Clay, how it stopped, what happened, and how Clay got his rifle back, how the Sasquatch actually left, I do not know those things. Clay did not tell me any of that, and I never had the guts to ask him. I just couldn't rip open that wound again. Never again did me and my brother talk about that day. I really don't know if the pain meds got him talking or what. There are moments that I doubt it all, and I tell myself it was just the pain meds making the whole story up. But then I remember those footprints. I remember how something had scared one of the strongest and most courageous men I've ever personally known to blank out, to go white, to go speechless, to urinate on himself. And then I come back round to knowing it wasn't the pain meds making it all up. Clay died just a few years ago. They said it was a heart attack in his sleep that took him. I have often wondered if he died from one of the nightmares that I knew he often had, and I suspected what those nightmares were about. I pray that Clay did not die dreaming of that Sasquatch terrorizing him. He was only 58. Some of the family wanted him brought back up here to be buried. I said no, absolutely not. We're going to bury him right there in the smack dab middle of Little Rock, right in the city, far away from the woods that he was now scared of and avoided for the rest of his life. I won out, and Clay is buried there at Roselawn, where no Sasquatch will likely ever walk. I avoided that hunting area for many years. I did not want to face my brother's tormentor alone, although if I did, I know I wouldn't hesitate to shoot as he had hesitated. But in the last couple years, I've been going right back to that spot, right back to where Clay had his stand, although one of the oaks is now gone. While there, I'm loud. I've done all I could to attract the attention of that Sasquatch. Of course, I scare everything else off, but I don't really care. Everything else is not what I'm hunting. I'm hunting a Sasquatch, a particular Sasquatch. I guess you could say I have a family debt to clear with him. And once, just once, when I was there, when there was a thick early morning fog, just like all those years ago, and the woods went too quiet and too still, I heard footsteps in the distance, heavy, measured, two-legged. I got out of the stand and I went off to try to track and chase it, but I never caught up with it. Maybe this fall I will. Signed, Jessie from Arkansas. All right. Hey, Jessie, thank you for sending that in. I was literally hanging on every word. I had a hard time recording it because I was getting so caught up in this story. And listen, all you Razorback fans out there, do me a favor. Raise a glass for Clay the next time they play LSU and they win. No offense to my LSU fans. I love Louisiana. I lived in Rapides Parish. But hey, for Clay's sake, raise a glass. All right, Sasquatch, listen, that's it for this episode. Until we meet up again, keep your snackage plates full, keep your coffee or tea hot, and keep your eyes and your ears open, because you never know who or what you might run into. And as always, please remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening.